What is going on, guys? Pete Nova here with Player Profiler. Going a little bit earlier today than normal. I am actually going to be on the road going to the Phillies game and wanted to make sure I bang this out and come here to you guys live here on the Player Profiler channel. We got a lot to talk about. Week 5 is in the books. We're moving ahead on to week number 6. And there's a lot that's kind of uncovered, a lot of things that have happened so far, some surprises, some guys that have came out of nowhere, and then some other players that really have just shown consistency throughout the season so far that need to be highlighted and need to be adjusted for the rest of the season in our rankings. So we're going to start off today's show with the first takeaway. And it's can you Diggs it? Yep, Stefon Diggs coming off of an awesome performance last night. Drake May and the New England Patriots beat Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And in a hostile environment, they go in there and they beat a team that was undefeated. So now we have no more undefeated teams in the NFL. The Eagles lost to my Denver Broncos, and the Buffalo Bills lost to the New England Patriots. Two young quarterbacks, Drake May and Bo Nix, going in and making some noise, in a hostile environment with a signature win for them in their careers. Probably the biggest wins for both of those quarterbacks. But let's talk a little bit about Stefon Diggs, who, Stefon Diggs has been a interesting player. He was very cheap in drafts this offseason, somewhere around anywhere from pick 70 to pick 80 is usually where he was being drafted in PPR formats in fantasy football this year. And it's been a little bit of a slower ramp-up period for Stefon Diggs. Took him some time to get going, but he's put together back-to-back really solid weeks, and this was the best week he's had as a New England Patriot so far. 10 receptions on 12 targets for 146 yards for Stefon Diggs. He had a 40% target share. It's the first New England wide receiver with consecutive 100-yard games since Julian Edelman. And this is a guy who only played 51% of the snaps, Stefon Diggs. So he's not even playing as a full-time player. And when he's on the field, he's getting targeted early and often. And we're starting to see him ramp up, be healthy, be more involved in this offense. And it's starting to pay dividends. Again, back-to-back really strong finishes for Stefon Diggs. And I expect this to continue for him as he starts to play a little bit more, as that connection with Drake May starts to continue. And so Stefon Diggs is a player that you probably don't want to buy him now, because you're probably paying a little bit of a premium for him, but he certainly looks like he is going to be the part there with that team as a veteran to go help them. So a really, really strong outing for week 1. This week for Stefon Diggs in back-to-back weeks. Like I said, 100 yards. Let's see if those snaps start to go up. Again, only 51%, but a 40% target share this past week. When he's on the field, we know they want to get him the football. And so again, a really strong week for Stefon Diggs in week number 1. With my first takeaway, I keep saying week number 1 because it's number 1 on my checklist. Let's move over to the second one, and it is court is in session. This is probably more of a selfish one to talk about here because Courtland Sutton is one of my guys, being a Denver Broncos fan, but he's put on and put out for fantasy managers so far this year. This is a player that many analysts, just fantasy players, were saying they were avoiding Courtland Sutton coming off of a year where they felt like his price was inflated. And, at his age of 30 years old, this is a guy that people are saying there's just no way he's going to get better. And we're seeing it pay off, right? I mean, it's a guy that was at the 4-5 turn, somewhere around there, somewhere late in the 5th round, depending on your leagues. And right now, Courtland Sutton, 10th in fantasy points per game in PPR. He's 10th in fantasy points, but he's 11th in points per game, 10th in yards for receivers right now, 11th in touchdowns, 12th in receptions, 15th in targets, and it's the best start to season in his entire career. And the next 5 games really, really solid for Cortland Sutton. I think the big thing that we saw for him is that, this is a player that had a really tough matchup this week against the Eagles secondary, against some good corners, especially Quinyon Mitchell, and Cortland Sutton won that matchup. It was arguably the worst game Quinyon Mitchell has had in his career when it comes to the stats allowed, to an opposing wide receiver that he was covering. So a really, really nice test, and a nice game for Sutton, who had 99 yards, and showed up to be pivotal for them. But a really strong stretch of games coming up for him. He gets the Giants, he gets Dallas, and he gets Vegas. Those are three teams in the next five that are top four in points allowed to wide receivers in fantasy. He also gets the New York Jets this week, who are 16th when it comes to points allowed. But ultimately, the Jets have been a team that's gave up some big plays as well to wide receivers. So I could absolutely see him playing well in London in that matchup. 87% snap share for Cortland Sutton. We know Sean Payton likes to rotate the personnel, and Cortland Sutton is still out there, early and often. 87% snap share, a 22% target share. He's clearly a favorite for Bo Nix, a young quarterback who's trying to make a name for himself, trying to get comfortable in this offense. And so a really, really strong sign for Cortland Sutton. Moving on to number 3, and Mason Taylor's breakout is starting to bubble up, folks. If it isn't here already, young tight end, rookie tight end for the New York Jets, coming into the game, had his best game of his young career in week 4, 7 targets, 4 receptions, 65 yards for Mason Taylor, and also got into the end zone. And then coming in as well, the 2 games prior, he had 6.5 targets per game over that last 2, and 4.6 catches per game, or 4.5 catches per game. So, he was starting to build momentum. And then in this game, 9 catches on 12 targets, 67 yards, and a 26.1% target share. And this Jets team is looking like they're going to be playing from behind, which could be beneficial for a guy like Mason Taylor, right? It's really only Garrett Wilson and then, Breece Hall. They really don't have a strong number 2 option, a true number 2 option. And it looks like Mason Taylor is starting to get comfortable in this offense and starting to establish himself as a number 2 in this offense. So really, really encouraging sign for Mason Taylor, who was a top tight end finishing this week. Moving on to number 4, and it's Jamo's step back. Jameson Williams, extremely disappointing. 1 catch on 1 target for 9 yards in a game where his team scored over 30 points in a very, very soft matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, that you thought this was a smash play, right? Cincinnati Bengals defense has been a defense that's giving up a lot of chunk plays to receivers. And, this was a tough game for Jamo, and he's had a couple of tough games, right? Since week 1, where he was able to salvage, he had a big play for a touchdown in week 1. He hasn't got over 5 fantasy points since. And he's had 100% of the snaps over the last 4 weeks. That's number 1 for wide receivers in the NFL. So he's out there. He's running all the routes possible for the team right now, and he's just not getting it done, which is even more concerning. You can look at it maybe from a positive light and say, hey, he's out there on 100% of the snaps. His day's going to come. But this is a consistent thing with Jameson Williams, consistently being inconsistent. He's going to have his big games, Jameson Williams, but he's also going to have a lot of games where you're kind of puzzled, because he's really fourth fiddle in this offense, right? You have St. Brown, you have Laporta, you have Gibbs. Those are the top 3. Now you have David Montgomery from just a touch and opportunity share. Heck, David Montgomery is catching more passes, it feels like, in this offense right now. So right now, he's at best 4th receiving option in this offense and 5th option overall in the offense. So Jameson Williams, I just don't expect it to happen for him where he becomes a consistent player. And he's really going to be matchup dependent. And he might even be a guy that you can't even play the matchups with until you see it, from him, because he just had a smash matchup against the Bengals and did nothing for us. So Jameson Williams, 1 catch, 1 target, 9 yards, just not going to get it done. Super disappointing for people that really pegged him as a player who, was going to, really break out this year, as we've seen him start to slowly build momentum year after year. And he comes into the year, gets the extension, and you're thinking, all right, well, Jameson Williams, he's got to be involved. They just paid him, but he's just not. And just this is just what it is. This is the Jameson Williams experience right now. So Jameson Williams, I would not be playing him right now until we see it. It's super hard to get him into the lineup, and he's really going to be matchup dependent at the moment. Number 5, a little bit more fun here. Ozempic Deebo Samuel. Everyone pegged this guy as out of shape, overweight. Through everything in the book, Terrell Owens was coming out in the offseason making jokes about his weight and his size. And, he's done nothing but silence the haters. And it's really awesome to see for a guy that, has had a bumpy career the last few years, but staying healthy, looking like he might have put on some weight last year. And then maybe they said, or it might have been the opposite. He lost weight. And either way, it's just been a tough stretch of years for Deebo. And right now, wide receiver 7 in a new offense, in a new home, and 8 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown this week against the Chargers. And he's on pace right now, Deebo Samuel, for 100 catches, 1,000 yards this season alone. And Deebo Samuel in 5 games, totaling 30 catches, 300 receiving yards, 46 rushing yards, and 4 total touchdowns. Another guy that, if you drafted him similar to where Stephon Diggs was going, somewhere around that 70 to 80 range was his ADP in many formats. And, Deebo Samuel has been phenomenal. And of course, the Terry McLaurin, him being out definitely helps him. And I don't want to sit here and say that it doesn't, but I think even with Terry coming back, when he does, I think Deebo has earned himself, a strong target share, a strong workload, a strong opportunity share in this offense. He's helped them out. While this is a team that's dealt with tons of injuries, he's been a constant in this offense and on this team that just had a huge win against the Chargers on the road. So, and we have no idea what's happening with Terry McLaurin. Will he return? Will he not? We'll see. But Deebo Samuel stock up right now. And overall, some stock up here as well. If you're talking about Deebo Samuel, who, many pegged needed to get into shape, the Ozempic, you don't need to take Ozempic to get into shape.
Always have to check in on the Podfather. How's the recovery from the rotator cuff injury coming? Well, it's going great. Playing a round of golf as I did today. Hit him pretty good. Why? The FITBOD app. Because this app creates workout routines specifically for your goals and then tracks your progress and adjust the workout routine as you build strength, as you build flexibility to ensure that you don't plateau. So if you want to get stronger, if you want to be in better condition, lose weight, recover from an injury, whatever it is, you don't need a personal trainer because the FITBOD app is calibrated by personal trainers. So go to fitbod.me/player, fitbod.me/player. You get 25% off your subscription, or you can try it free for 7 days. So level up your workout routine now. Join FITBOD today for a personalized workout plan. Try it free for 7 days, 25% off your subscription at fitbod.me/player.
Now, look, in season, I definitely let myself go a little bit, right? As a content creator, it's a long season, a lot of beers on the couch, a lot of buffalo chicken dip, a lot of wings, right? And so, go ahead, check out the FitBod app as a player profiler sponsor here, and go get into shape. I might have to download it myself and start getting that incorporated into my regimen. But let's move on to number 6 here, and it's the Browns tight ends, and their stock is up right now, guys. I mean, I think everybody wanted Joe Flacco to be the starter in this offense at the quarterback position because we all thought he's going to throw the ball, he's going to push it, it's going to be good for everybody in this offense. And one guy, at least, that it hasn't been good for is David Njoku, right? I mean, David Njoku, not even a top 12 tight end on a weekly basis in rankings and finishes. I mean, it's been really tough for Njoku, and they make a quarterback change. Dylan Gabriel inserts himself into the lineup this week, and Browns lose a heartbreaker to the Vikings, but they fought hard. And the one thing I'll say is Dylan Gabriel, for a guy that I'm not I'm not necessarily super jazzed about Dylan Gabriel's future as a quarterback in the NFL. It was encouraging to see him play well. He looked competent. It didn't look like the moment was too big for him. He got the ball out quickly, and that should be helpful for David Njoku and Harold Fannin Jr. Now, I prefer David Njoku. I always have this, even when Fannin started to kind of get steamed up a little bit, I still preferred Njoku, but both of these guys look like they are going to benefit from Dylan Gabriel, who gets gets the ball out quickly and is decisive. And it should, he's not going to push the ball downfield like Joe Flacco. And it should benefit these guys. When you look at what happened this week, we had 6 receptions, 67 yards for David Njoku, and a nice touchdown where Gabriel put it right on him. And he led the team in receiving production. This team is down Tillman. Isaiah Bond had a lot of targets, but, didn't really make much of them, right? They just couldn't connect. Jerry Jeudy is still doing Jerry Jeudy things where unless it's Jameson Winston, we have no idea what to assume, what kind of guy we're getting. And Harold Fannin also scored a touchdown. Next 5 matchups, for these tight ends are top 10 units in points allowed to the tight end position. So they are getting above average, good matchups in the next 5 for Fannin and Njoku. And if you're struggling for tight ends right now, it might be worth it to go throw out an offer for whichever guy you can get cheaper right now. Because while I like Njoku more rest of the season, I don't think these guys will be very far off. They're probably going to cannibalize each other. And look, there's a world where Njoku gets traded too. Very, very much possible. But I think both of these guys should benefit from Dylan Gabriel in this offense and a really, really strong schedule in the next few weeks. Now, Flacid Woody versus the stiff Chubb. We got Woody Marks and Nick Chubb, and this was the week of right now it feels like, man, like a rookie running back is getting steamed up during the week every single week because of a solid performance the week before. And a lot of times we find ourselves getting let down. The only guys that have consistently done it are the big 3 right now: Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton, who we'll talk about a little bit. And then, of course, Quinshon Judkins, who I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about him. Maybe that'll be a little bonus at the end here. But Woody Marks, I talked about on the show, and I don't think it was a bad acquisition. I even had him as one of my favorite starts on the week. He was a top 20 play for me this week. But I did caution people. I said I would not be spending more than 30% FAB on Woody Marks because, look, this is a team that, I think D'Amico Ryans likes to, he's a coach that likes to stick to his veterans. And Nick Chubb is an established player. He continued to start this week and kind of threw a little bit of cold water on the Woody Marks optimism, but I'm not quitting Woody Marks just yet, guys. I think better days are ahead of him. He did fall flat this week. He did play the most snaps out of all the running backs. He played 27 out of the 70 available snaps for running backs. And he was the clear late down late down back, right? 63% snaps, which is very encouraging. We know he's going to have that receiving role in an offense and a team that, we're going to see, right? The Texans 2 weeks in a row now have had nice pops on offense, but they've had some good matchups, and maybe this will push them to, continuing and finding an identity for their offense. But overall, I think, he's not a must start unless the matchup is good. But we have to also keep in mind the backups came in early in this game. Damian Pierce played 16 snaps. And so, we have to keep that in mind. That's 11 snaps less than Woody Marks. And I think Nick Chubb played somewhere around 24. So, that's not going to happen every single week. And the backups came in and it kind of just stunk for Woody Marks. And it definitely gave you a flaccid Woody. And if you started Nick Chubb, you felt pretty good because I thought he was a pretty solid start this week too. So unfortunate if you did start Woody Marks. I think better days are ahead, but he's going to be matchup dependent. He's not going to be a guy you're comfortable being like, yeah, I can run this guy out here every single week and be okay. And know he's going to give me, 10 points at minimum. We're just not there just yet, but we could get there. So we'll see. Next player we're going to talk about, and how could we not? Rico Suave, Rico Dowdle. I mean, this guy won you your week. I mean, we talked about Michael Carter, we talked about Woody Marks, all these guys, DeMarcado. These were the guys that everyone wanted to talk about, including myself, like, early on in the week about these are the targets. These are the guys to look at. Of course, Michael Carter ended up doing well. DeMarcado did not. But Rico comes out. We see Chubb Hubbard, I think limited participant on Wednesday and then a limited participant on Thursday. And then it sounds like the calf injury he had actually got worse, not better. And that's concerning for Chuba Hubbard to me. I don't think he's going to play this week. If I had to guess today on Monday, it's early. I don't think Chuba Hubbard's going to play. I don't think they're going to push him, especially with how Rico played last week. They have a capable guy, and if the calf injury has gotten worse and they're invested money into Chuba Hubbard, they just gave him an extension. Why push him when you have a capable guy in Rico Dowdle who looked more than fine? I mean, better than fine. I mean, 23 rushes, 206 yards, one run rushing touchdown, 3 receptions, 28 yards, 30.9 fantasy points. I mean, how much more could you want from Rico Dowdle? And if you play in leagues where you get bonuses for 100 and 200 yards, I mean, you got even more points, which I love bonuses in fantasy football. So I definitely got some bonuses there. But I think this is one of those things where sometimes people zig and you got to zag, right? And Rico, he wasn't on the radar for a lot of people because a lot of people's waivers go through on Tuesdays. And I'm a huge advocate for, if you're a commissioner and you play, and you're setting up your league, like, I personally think Wednesday night waivers is the way to go. I think you should give fantasy managers as much information as possible before they start dumping FAAB into players. Now, you might also sit there and say, well, it also, on a Tuesday, you can get some deals because people aren't as awake because it's earlier on in the week and maybe people forget about bidding. I don't care. I want the competition. I'm not shying away from, and trying to, get over on people that aren't paying attention. I don't play in leagues with guys that are not paying attention to their weekly waivers runs. Right. So to me, I'd rather give owners the most knowledge and the most information. And right now we're getting that on Wednesdays when the initial injury report comes out. And a lot of guys are getting put on the injury report that aren't even injured too, which is the tough thing, right? It's a lot of veteran rest days that are getting pushed up as like, oh shoot, like, is this guy hurt? Like, we got to look out and go pick up his backup? Like, what's going on? So, but Rico wasn't on the radar for a lot of people because we didn't know yet. Right. I mean, so that's kind of the thing. If I can give some advice, that's something that if you're looking at settings and things to change next year, I'm a big advocate for that. And I think that should be the standard in all fantasy leagues. If you play in high stakes, FFPC here, who's a sponsor for us, they run their waivers Wednesday nights as well, right? So high stakes, people have money involved. Like, you should have as much information before making those decisions. Now, Rico, if he does play and is the starter this week because Chubb is out, he gets Dallas, and Dallas is 27th ranked versus running back. So it's a great matchup. And when I say 27th, I mean to say 27th worst at defending the running back position in fantasy football. So they're a top 5 or top 6 matchup right now to fantasy football running backs, and Rico's going to get him on tap in a good matchup. We saw what Breece Hall just did to Dallas last week, and now Rico's not Breece Hall, but I certainly think he's going to be he's an RB2 play this week if no Chuba Hubbard. I could say that confident and comfortably. Now, moving on to number 9, we talked about Omarion and Hampton, and we talked about a little bit about him earlier on in the show. We talked about Marks and all these rookies. Hampton suffers an ankle injury, a little bit of a setback here. Seen in a walking boot after the game. You never want to hear that. I'm sure he's going to get imaging done, and that's why he's in the walking boot, or maybe he did get it done, and we just haven't known or don't know yet. I don't think the team has to really tell us until Wednesday. So we'll see if anything trickles out before that. But what I would say is Kamani Vidal scores the touchdown, I believe, this week. And, people are probably going to, go out on waivers and go try to get Kamani Vidal. I'm going to put my stamp here and say I'm going out there and getting Haskins out of the two guys. I think ultimately Haskins is a guy that Harbaugh likes, he trusts, and he can carry a larger workload. I mean, Haskins played for Harbaugh in college, and we saw a little bit of the frustrations with Haskins last year working into this running back room. I think Haskins is the guy to own if Omarion Hampton does miss time. That is the player that I'm going to drop money on or FAAB on and target this week's waiver runs. And then moving on to our last takeaway, and then I'll answer a few questions here. Sam Darnold is in fuego. This is a player that on my other channel, he was one of my favorite streams of the week. He was my quarterback stream of the week. Quarterback 14 on the year, quarterback 9 in the last 4 games. If you remove week 1 where he scored just 4 points, he's number 9 right now in terms of quarterback points in fantasy. 7th in big time throws, 3rd in ADOT. So this is a quarterback who's stretching the field. He's throwing it deep and giving us big chunk plays, big playability, which is great for JSN. I mean, JSN's been phenomenal this year. He's 6th in sacks, so he's playing 6th lowest amount of sacks. So he's playing clean football right now at the quarterback position. He's staying upright. The line is giving him time, and he's maneuvering around well. He's tied with Jaden Daniels first when it comes to lowest turnover worthy plays. He only has 2. And keep in mind, Jaden Daniels hasn't played all year. So, that's also another nod to him. Darnold is tied for first with a guy that hasn't played the full season. And Darnold's played every game so far. 9 touchdowns for Darnold right now, 6th in passing yards. He gets the Jaguars on tap, which right now, they're 10th when it comes to a top 10 matchup when it comes to points allowed to quarterbacks next week. We'll see how they fare. I like the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. They've been a top defense when it comes to passing EPA allowed, but they've given up some points to quarterbacks overall. So we'll see how they do against Kansas City this week. But Sam Darnold, I mean, he's a guy right now that I think you could stream him rest of season possibly and be okay. He doesn't have the best schedule, so to speak, but he looks so comfortable in the system and he's been putting up awesome numbers for fantasy football. I'm going to get to a couple questions here for a mailbag. And let's check out the chat real quick. Adrian is here. And he said, would you trade CMC for Pickens and Kyron? My squad is Jalen Hurts, Bucky, JJ, JSN, Quentin Johnson, Brees, Hampton, Kelsey, benches, McConkey, White, Downs, Franklin, Jennings. Okay, so you have White to back up Bucky, which is definitely a positive here. So you at least have that handcuff. I'm going to tell you, I'm not moving CMC for anything right now. I'm just not. Like, if CMC is healthy, I mean, this guy is pretty much playing the easy button at wide receiver at the running back position. I get it. The health is a concern. You're just kind of waiting and kind of like, flinching. Is it going to happen yet? And, is he going to get hurt? But he hasn't yet. And I'm not playing fantasy football scared. And CMC to me, I'd rather have him over Kyron and Pickens. You have depth here. You have JSN. You have Quentin Johnson, who's been awesome this year. You have Lad McConkey. You have some depth here. And Kyron's a downgrade, of course, but I wouldn't make this move. I don't think you have to be completely honest with you. If you're scared about CMC, it's a good offer. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not. But CeeDee Lamb is also coming back at some point. So I don't think we're going to see this explosion from George Pickens. He's going to be very good, but I don't think I would do this deal. That's just me though. But you gotta weigh your tolerance for risk, and there is always that risk that CMC is going to get hurt. But everybody's going to get hurt this year. It's just a matter of if it's going to make them, force them to miss time or not. So thank you for the question. Ryan said, how much FAAB would you spend on Xavier Worthy? Someone just dropped him for Juju in a 12-team league. I mean, you're probably not going to find many better players than Xavier Worthy on waivers. I would say I would probably be fine spending about 70% of your FAAB. I'm not going to go out there and tell you 100% because, to be honest with you, Rashee Rice is coming back at some point, and there's some swelling. There's some issues with his ankle with Worthy. He's obviously got the shoulder, possibility for re-injury. Most people would tell you spend the whole thing. I wouldn't. And if it means you miss out, that's fine. But I would much rather have some FAAB to play with than run the risk that, Worthy had a really awesome game when he came back last week, and he could absolutely be good the rest of the season, but there's still injury risk with the shoulder, with the ankle, which now he was downgraded to questionable, but he's going to play he's going to play tonight. But clearly there's some swelling going on, so it's bad vibes in that regard. But he's going to play, I'm sure, and I'm sure he's going to be fine. But I would send at max 70% FAAB unless you're in like a 14 man league or higher, and then that's a point where it's like, hey, you know what, like, I'm willing to empty the clip here because there's just not as much talent out there, and it's that much harder to get top end talent. So that would be the opportunity there where I would go ahead and do that. AAA coming in here with Gibson hurt. Ramondre Stevenson owners should feel pretty safe knowing he won't get benched next time he fumbles. Yeah, I got to be honest. I'm coming to grips that Trevion Henderson. I don't know. We keep saying maybe it's going to happen second half of the year, and I've said it. I'm trying to stay firm in that. I will say with Gibson's injury, that should help Henderson. I never want to bank or applaud injuries, but we have to move forward in fantasy football and in football in general. It's next man up, and Trevion Henderson is now next man up. And I'll tell you, I know the Ramondre jokes have gone out there about the fumbles and stuff, but I can't imagine Vrabel's going to continue to put up with it if it continues to happen. It's just become way too much of an issue. But even still, there should be a bump up in production for Henderson and a bump up in touches and time with the Gibson injury. So that's definitely a positive to take away from it, even though it's a pretty unfortunate injury for Antonio Gibson. CK said Judkins and Hawk for Kraft and Pollard. I wouldn't do that. Judkins for me, he just looks awesome. We keep sitting here saying, and I've said it too, if they get behind with this offense, how much is he going to catch the ball? And he's caught the ball fine. They've used him as a receiver out of the backfield just fine. He's looked phenomenal. He's a huge upgrade over Pollard, in my opinion, who salvaged his day with a touchdown. But if Pollard's not scoring touchdowns, it's going to be really hard for him to be good for fantasy and have high end weeks. And Tyjae Spears just came back, so I'm sure he's going to eat into that workload a little bit. Even though Pollard's had a really strong workload so far in terms of that opportunity share. But I think Judkins is way too high of a clear cut ahead of Pollard. And Kraft has been awesome. Hawkinson has been disappointing. But, I mean, I'd rather take the better running back in a deal like this. Tight ends are up and down. And we know the Packers, while Kraft has been awesome, sometimes they're going to push different buttons every week. So we'll see. But I would comfortably stick on the Judkins and Hawkinson side here. I wouldn't make this move if I were you. But that's going to do it for us, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you have any questions that I didn't get to yet, make sure you just, when this video closes out, send it into the video, and I will happily come back into the video and answer them. If you need a Monday Night Miracle tonight, good luck to you. If your team is 0-4, 0-5, I'm sorry to hear that. Not 0-4, but 0-5. Sorry to hear that. Good luck to you, and we'll see you guys next time.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.